So when Roy asked me to do this talk, I'm a shameless show-off, so I said yes. But I kind of thought, well, what kind of wisdom have I got to share with the group? And I'm not sure I've got any particular wisdoms. I'm just going to kind of tell you the story of Pianola and my story, and just a few things that I've kind of noticed or learned along the way. And if that's helpful to anyone else, then fantastic. So it actually started in 2009, the original idea, so it's kind of been going for quite a while, and I've called the talk, if I knew then what I know now, and so at the end I'll kind of tell you the answer to that question, would I have done it or not? So I'm not a developer, but I've enjoyed tech kind of ever since I was 10 and had a ZX81. This is as far as my programming career went. That was about it. That's all I ever learned to code. And since then, I've had a fairly kind of eclectic career. So I've been a children's entertainer, an Avon rep, a croupier, a holiday courier. I set up Roots and Fruits. I organise events and conferences for a civil service department called ACAS. Then I went freelance and worked at the wonderful co-working space that Linda was responsible for setting up at Old Broadcasting House. And finally, Pianola. So as you can tell, I'm kind of a restless person who gets easily bored. One of the nice things about Pianola is it's kind of constantly reinventing and it's constantly creative, so it seems to be holding my attention for a bit longer than maybe some other things. So Pianola is a product for bridge clubs and bridge players, and I got into playing bridge when I bought lessons for my dad for his 60th birthday. So it's been quite a nice kind of father-son bonding thing. But does anyone here actually play bridge? Okay, 2 people. That's more than I was expecting. Does anybody's parents or grandparents play bridge? 1 more. Okay. I mean, bridge is it's a game for old people. The average age of a bridge player in this country is 62. In America, it's even older. It's 67. And that's for a number of reasons, partly because it takes a while to learn. You generally need to do about a year's worth of night classes just to learn how to play the game. And then it's the kind of game that you never stop developing. So it's a great thing to do in retirement. It's proven to ward off Alzheimer's and be very good for mental ability, agility, and keeping yourself social and active. So it is a really good thing for retirement, but the truth is it's not particularly popular amongst our age group. The 50s was probably its heyday. That was when bridge was at its peak, but then there was no TV, there weren't any restaurants, no one had any money. It's a really cheap entertainment, but people of all ages, it was kind of mass entertainment at that time. But that doesn't mean it's completely without players these days. You can't quite tell, but the scale of this room that goes kind of way back and way around the corner, there's hundreds of tables. And this was a tournament on the Gold Coast in Australia earlier this year. And at that event that lasted a week, nearly 8,000 tables of bridge were played. Now, when I'm talking about a table of bridge, I'm talking about 4 people sitting down and playing a game of bridge. So in the course of a week, nearly 8,000 tables of bridge were played. And this isn't even the biggest bridge congress in the world. The biggest ones are in America, where you get almost double that. So it is played all over the world. So it's a niche, but it's a global niche. By some accounts, it is the most popular game in the world. And it's played at home, but also in bridge clubs, and it's the clubs that are my marketplace. So just to kind of give you a little introduction to bridge, if you're not aware of it at all, I guess most of you will have seen this kind of thing in a newspaper, these bridge columns with these kind of unintelligible narratives and weird things down here. Now the reason that bridge is, or one of the reasons why it's kind of so fascinating to players, is that this layer of cards here is what this article's about. Now, if I were to take a pack of cards and shuffle it, that sequence that I just created has probably never existed before and it will probably never exist again, that unique sequence. Because if you took every possible lay of cards, 52 cards, deal them into 4 hands, if you took every possible combination and represented it by a millimetre square, it would cover the surface of 100 million Earths. So the possibilities out of one deck of 52 cards are so, so infinite that you never ever kind of get the same hand twice. So it's always a challenge. So the thing about bridge is, and there's quite a lot of kind of developer type people who play bridge, because a lot of the skills are kind of very appealing to that kind of mindset. It's about code. It's about, there's a whole sequence where you try and bid with your partner to work out what you've got, and that's basically done in a code. So it's about coding, it's about communication, it's about logic, it's about solving a puzzle. And for me, the useful bit is a bit of luck as well, so even somebody as crap as I am can win every now and again. But for many people, I'm only showing you this because I absolutely adore it, but for many people, bridge is basically number wang. Does anyone remember number wang? From, it was a Mitchell and Webb.
Talking about. Our contestants today are Julie from Somerset and Simon, who is from Somerset. So before we begin, Julie, any hobbies down there in Somerset?
Yes.
Simon? No. Great. Well, if you're ready, let's play number one. Julie, to play first.
3,
9,
16,
12,
8.2.
4. That's number one.
There we
Round
go.
2. Simon.
I love that. Anyway, that was just me indulging myself, sorry. So the thing is, it's, let's get the slides back up. Here's a typical hand of cards, and the way it works, you've got 4 players who are playing in 2 pairs. You've got north and south, they're a partnership, versus east-west. And there are 2 parts to the game. The first part is trying to work out how many tricks your side might win, and see if you can bid in an auction to say how many tricks you're going to win, and whichever side bids the highest then has to try and make that number of tricks, and their opponents are trying to prevent them from doing that. So when I say a trick, what I'm talking about is that hand I just showed you there is this one. So here's that particular lay of cards, and so south is going to play the first card, and let's say they play the ace of spades. From this point on, everyone has to play a spade if they've got a spade. So west over here will say play the 3, north the 4, east the 10. So the ace is highest, so south won that trick. In fact, north-south won that trick. Then they might continue with the king, the 6, the 5, and the jack. Again, south won that trick. And then if they lead the queen, the spade, the 7, north hasn't got any spades left, so they might throw something away, like a diamond. But now this hand, in this particular hand, hearts is known as the trump suit. So what can happen here is east can now play the 3, and that has won the trick because trumps beat every other suit. So even though it's a lower card than the queen, east wins the trick. So in this particular hand, the contract was where east was trying to win 10 tricks with hearts as the trump suit. And so far, north-south have won 2, east-west have won 1. It carries on. If east-west are successful in making those 10 tricks, they get points. If their opponents are successful in defeating them, they get points. So that's kind of the basic rules of bridge. And in a club environment, what happens is this particular hand will have been pre-dealt, and it will be presented at the table in a board. So the 4 hands will be in slots. And after this table has played it, they'll put those cards back in, and they'll pass that board to the next table, and the next table will play the exact same hand. So it's a competition as to who can get the best score playing the same cards as everybody else played. It's known as duplicate bridge. So in theory, the best players will win because they will get the better score with the exact same cards as everyone else had. So even though I said bridge is played by basically retired people, that doesn't mean that they're complete laggards. And in actual fact, it turns out they love tablets and iPhones, which was a bit surprising when we first noticed it on the Google Analytics. This is a year ago. 65% of our traffic was from desktops and everything else was from mobile and tablets. A year on, it's now 10% increase in a year in traffic from tablets and mobiles. And actually, it seemed a bit counterintuitive at first, but in hindsight, it's obvious because this is a population of people who don't like IT. They don't enjoy the prospect of using a PC, and why would they? You know, they're terrible, and particularly, you know, were terrible until fairly recently. So, pick up an iPad, and of course, it's just lovely. So it's quite interesting that this population are embracing technology when it's usable, when it has a good user experience and a good user interface. Which is why Izzy sitting there is a key member of my team because he does my UI and user experience stuff. Because this marketplace is, I think, poorly served, and this is why I started the business. It's kind of most things on the web for bridge clubs and bridge players are, you know, kind of www circa 1995. And in actual fact, when you look at the HTML of this page, it is circa 1995. It's full of deprecated code using tables for layout, all sorts of crap under there. And if we look at a website that's built using that was a website builder called Bridgewebs, and they're kind of my biggest rival. If we look at a website built using that product, this is. That's how it looks, and this is their idea of responsiveness. So let me just, if I can. No, there we go. So this is their idea of responsiveness. Watch what happens here. This is lovely. There you go. Now, I was going to say I don't want to slag him off. I do want to slag him off. It's a terrible piece of junk, and but the thing about Bridge is it's full of hobbyists who are passionate about it. And this was a hobby project that became an accidental business. And he's got 1,500 clubs signed up globally, which if I had 1,500 clubs signed up, I'd be very happy. So that's one of our big competitors. And there's other products as well, like this one is actually, it's a product called Deep Finesse that allows you to play out a hand. The thing I just showed you earlier where I was playing out that hand, that's our kind of modern version of this. This was a great thing, and this was launched in the mid-90s and it was fantastic at the time, but it's Windows software. Just installing software is a major barrier to a lot of people in this marketplace, and because it's Windows, that means obviously no iPads, no Macs, no phones, so that's almost half your people wiped out. And even if you do have a Windows PC and you install the software, you've actually got to manually build this hand before you can even start playing it. With Pianola, if you remember, you just press a button and the hand launches. So we looked around and thought, these things are all fairly ropey. I think we could do better. And I think people want better. I mean, I've always been a Mac man, even, you know, back in the days when, you know, Windows and Mac people were kind of totally at war with each other, and, you know, when there was no kind of crossover and intercompatibility. And of course, Mac was tiny in those days. But still, I did have this kind of faith that people do prefer nice looking, nice, usable things over ugly, horrible things. And that's kind of what I hoped with Pianola. So just kind of, and kind of finally, what clubs are using for their administration is often just a spreadsheet. So they've got a membership list and they'll often just store that on a spreadsheet, which is fine, it's kind of simple to use, but you can't then do any emailing from a spreadsheet. You can't easily do a membership renewal notification. You can't link players' results to a spreadsheet. It's just not a particularly good tool for their requirements. So Pianola was launched, and the idea is that it's at its heart is a cloud-based membership database that also does email marketing, management reports, allows you to build a website, that kind of thing for the club. It keeps your data in sync with other organisations. So in England, the English Bridge Union actually have an API, and Pianola connects into that API. So when a club in England does something with its player database, that's automatically synced to the the English Bridge Union. Also lets them keep their membership data in sync with their scoring software. So clubs use scoring devices and scoring software. It syncs with that. We only use open file formats, so CSV, XML, we kind of make a big deal of only using open file formats and trying to promote amongst Bridge the idea that this is a good thing for Bridge, because if people move away from the old proprietary formats that they were using previously, then it means there's just much more opportunity for innovation. Everybody can build new products instead of wasting their time trying to integrate with loads of proprietary file formats, using modern standards, proper HTML, CSS standards, and crucially providing what we hope is a great user experience. These users, they don't relish the idea of using IT, and when I'm kind of demonstrating to clubs and encouraging them to take up our free trial, there's so much fear about it's going to be hard, they're not going to be able to understand it, it's going to be too complicated, and then they get on the free trial and they ring me and say things like, oh God, it's like using, I did have somebody say it's like using an Apple product. It's like, oh wow, you couldn't have said anything better. So just a quick look at the product. This is the kind of club admin side that lets you look at things like how many tables you've had played in the past week or the previous week or the last 30 days, how many members you've got. There's a membership database in there. Where's my mouse? So if we go to the club admin side, so here's a membership database. There's my record. You can create all your membership records. You can create email groups to send targeted emails to people. When you do send a message, you can target it based on those groups that you've created, or you can use what we call smart groups, which let you query the data, such as people who played more than a certain number of times, or people who played less than a certain number of times, or people with a national ranking above or below a certain level. Various different queries we've built into there. I've taken my inspiration from products like MailChimp, and the way MailChimp was one of the first kind of web apps I became aware of and ever used, and remembering their kind of fanaticism about not being spammy and including unsubscribe links and making sure that you're respecting the recipients of your emails. All that kind of thing is what we build into here, because it's not stuff that bridge clubs would ever have thought about. They just think, well, we've got a list, we can email to it, and they don't necessarily understand that that's not a great idea, and providing an unsubscribe link and respecting your recipients is a good thing. So kind of giving them tools that allow them to do things in the right way is kind of important to me. Recently we also launched a website builder, which is a competitor, a kind of direct competitor to that BridgeWebs site that we just looked at. It's kind of simple, but we actually really do have a good responsive design that actually does do what you would hope it does, and tried to make the editing of it really easy. So it's just if you want to kind of position content, you just drag it and drop it. If you want to edit the content, you just click the edit pencil. So it's just kind of, it feels modern, it feels simple and intuitive, and means that they can actually, bridge clubs can have a modern kind of inviting face instead of a kind of clunky amateur out of date thing, because the game does need to attract young players. It attracts people as they're approaching retirement, and so people at that age actually expect this kind of thing, not something clunky and rubbish. So that's what the club can access. Players can access, as well as that replay feature, they can get information on their performance. So this is another fairly new feature. This tells people, I said there's 2 phases to a game. There's the bidding to work out kind of what you can make, how many of those 13 tricks you can make, and then there's actually playing the cards. So these pie charts tell people how they're doing in the bidding compared to what the best in field achieved, and how they did in the card play compared to what the best in field achieved. So they can identify, it's a bit like when you're watching football and it tells you how many attempts on goal or how much possession, all of that kind of thing. This is the equivalent for bridge. And this is kind of pretty innovative, really, and proving to be really popular.
How does all that data get into the...
Gets there from the club. The club uploads the results. So they upload the results and also a file of what the hands were. So we can analyse those hands. And on any hand, there's a theoretical maximum that can be achieved. So we calculate what that is and then compare whether what they bid was better or worse than the theoretical maximum, and whether they achieved that. So that's the kind of whistle-stop tour of bridge and pianola. So I guess some of the things I've learned on this project is that overnight success really does take quite a long time. And there's loads of blog posts around about the 10-year overnight success, and MailChimp CEO has talked about that, and a few other people. But I had the idea in summer of '09, and we launched in autumn of 2010. I'm yet to pay myself. So this is completely bootstrapped business, and everything we make is still being reinvested because the product needs more features. The great thing about getting customers is that they come with more requirements. So every customer kind of spawns an even longer product backlog, and we want to deliver all that stuff. So I do have a consultancy business that supports me and pays the mortgage, so I'm not taking any money out of the business, but that's kind of longer than I thought it would be, quite a lot longer than I thought it would be. It's made worse in my market because it's painfully slow. My particular customers are not people who make snap decisions, and also in this country, in Australia, clubs are all run by committees. So you give a committee a decision to make, and that's not going to happen quickly. So it's made that job a lot harder. Another thing that I've really struggled with is how you kind of keep the faith, because I started off with an idea, and I researched it as much as I could, and I went over to the States and spoke to clubs here and tried to figure out how much it might cost and how much it might make, and felt that it was worth the risk. But if it still hasn't paid me, was it? I kind of think to myself, am I just an idiot, basically? Would a sensible person have given up long ago? And until it's supporting me, until it's making money and making enough money, I'll always have that question. And that's really hard to sustain. I mean, I find that exhausting to sustain, that constant, if I had investors behind me, would they just say, give it up? Just move on, do something else. Like the Americans love to fail, failures, part of success, and we Brits don't like to fail. So I've kind of constantly got this argument going on. The way I kind of tackle that is read things like this by, do you know Seth Godin? He's kind of Marmite, I know, but I quite like him. And this was a blog post he wrote about 18 months ago at a particularly low ebb. And this blog post was called Gradually Then Suddenly, which is a bit of he robbed that quote from Ernest Hemingway. But this is what he says. It's not very long. Gradually then suddenly. This is how companies die, how brands wither, and, more cheerfully in the other direction, how careers are made. Gradually, because every day opportunities are missed, little bits of value are lost, customers become unentranced. We don't notice so much because, hey, there's profit. Profit covers many sins. Of course, one day the foundation is rotted and the support is gone, so is the profit. Suddenly, apparently quite suddenly, it falls apart. But it didn't happen suddenly, you just noticed it suddenly. The flip side works the same way. trust is earned, value is delivered, concepts are learned. Day by day we improve and build an asset, but none of it seems to be paying off. Until one day, quite suddenly, we become the 10-year overnight success. This is the way it works, but we too often make the mistake of focusing on the suddenly part. The media writes about suddenly, we notice suddenly, we talk about suddenly, but that doesn't mean that gradually isn't important. In fact, it's the only part you can actually do something about. So in these kind of dark days where I'm thinking, God, is this worth it? You know, just focusing on, well, actually all I can do is just kind of keep plodding on and try and give great support and try and build an awesome product and work with people like Izzy, and hopefully, suddenly will eventually happen. But, you know, I still can't tell you if it has or not. Feels like we're getting there. But the thing about kind of being bootstrapped is once I'd invested all my savings and then sold all my shares and then borrowed something off my parents, I'm in too deep. Like, actually, as somebody who's really invested so much of my own personal money, you can't turn back. It's like you're stuck on this one-way path. And again, if it were an investor who were just taking a kind of cold, hard look at whether or not this makes sense, I'm not sure they would keep going as long. So it's a real kind of tyranny that I've sunk huge amounts, for me, into this. You know, small beer by kind of VC standards, but for me, huge sums. And so now I'm kind of stuck. But there is no spare money, which is why everything I make has to go back in. And this is why development has been slower than I would have liked it to have been, which I think has harmed the business. It would have been better if we could have delivered our features sooner. We've got that Bridgeweb's competitor, even though I think his product's awful, he's got 5 years ahead of me. And I didn't catch up quick enough. So that's actually, you know, with hindsight, that's actually harmed the business. And I wish I'd worked harder at raising money in the first place than just thinking that I could bootstrap it on my own. Because the truth is, it's cost, basically, I've put in 4 times as much money as I thought I would. And I've also got a development company working with me now, and they've put sweat equity in as well. So it's cost a huge amount more than I thought. And I don't know, was that naivety or is that just how life is? I don't know, but I wish I'd had more money behind me than just my own limited resources. And the next thing is, you know, users don't necessarily care about what you think they care about. So it turns out, you know, they prefer ugly and crap to change. And I'm saying change because this is fantastic. And they're like, sounds like a lot of hard work, you know, changing, we know this. Which has kind of been really a bit heartbreaking. And, you know, kind of makes me kind of lose faith a little bit in human nature. Like, why don't you want something that's better? I know this is better, you know, why don't you want it? But there we are, that's how it is. But that means it's really important to listen really hard to the customers. I mean, there's this quote about, you know, supposed to be Henry Ford said, you know, if I'd asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. I don't know if that's apocryphal or if he did say that. And I remember kind of back in the beginning of this project, I was like, oh, great, you know, I'm gonna build them something that's so awesome they didn't even know they wanted it, and I'm gonna be the next Steve Jobs, you know, telling people what they want before they know they want it. Maybe not Steve Jobs, but you know, I did kind of have this romantic idea about how wonderful it would be for me to bestow on the bridge world this fantastic idea. And you know, they haven't necessarily wanted it, but the things that they have wanted have sometimes surprised me. And it's taken me a while to realise, and this is just something that's kind of come to us latterly, is that actually we started off with these Bridge Club admin tools. And in actual fact, all Bridge Club owners and managers are bridge players first and foremost. So it turns out when we launch these analysis features, people are really responding to those because they personally like, oh, I really like that. So because they like it, suddenly I want this for my club. Whereas, you know, being able to send personalized emails, you know, that aren't going to spam people and give them an unsubscribe link, you know, it's a really narrow population to reach who are going to respond to that and care about that. So this kind of balance of, I do think there's something in this, in that, you know, people might identify the problem and then identify a solution, and their solution might not be the best solution, and we might come up with a better solution. So I do believe there's that. But also, it's really important to, in amongst that kind of arrogance of thinking, you know, we know better what you need than you do, it is important to kind of filter out the things that you do need to hear from those customers. So it's not all been bad. I do think that, you know, in terms of the kind of gradually moving to suddenly, it feels like we're getting to the suddenly bit. And along the way, I have had lots of nice times. So here's me at the, so Bridge is a global business, so I have to go to Australia. And there's me with some kangaroos. And that's me at Graceland in Memphis. This one, prize if anyone can guess that, that's actually where they filmed Prisoner Cell Block H. You know, the 70s, I love that. St. Louis, I'm an airline geek, that's me sitting in the cockpit of a 787 on my way back from America last year. This is Alcatraz. This is a thing called Auto Bridge, a little gadget, and it turns out that prisoners at Alcatraz loved bridge. So that's something that's on display in Alcatraz. And this is me having Thanksgiving lunch with an American family who I was Airbnb-ing with over Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, which was, you know, a fantastic experience. So it's kind of given me kind of personally, I've had a lot of fun doing this project. But the question, you know, if I knew then what I know now, would I do it again? And I was pondering over this afternoon, and I was thinking it'd be really nice to give you a kind of romantic, like, hell yeah, I'd do it again, you know. But the truth is, and this is the truth, the answer to that question is, I think I probably would do it again. But ask me in a year.